Hi, and welcome to Photo News TV. Today I'm bringing you a gimbal for your long lenses. Not to be confused with a gimbal for video, which are usually electronic devices and they're pretty expensive. This is meant for long lenses like the 150 to 600. You can even use it with the 70 to 200 if you wanted to. And the reason for these is because they allow you more flexibility in shooting. It's easier to move around. I've undone my tripod collar so I can rotate my camera, spin it around, go portrait, go landscape, and they're very smooth. It's a fluid head meant for long lenses, and it allows you to get into angles that might not be possible with a regular ball head. It's also a lot smoother. You know, a tiny little ball head under here isn't quite as easy to move. This, I can turn the damping down and it's nice and slow, so it's very easy for tracking moving objects. Now this is from a brand that's new to Canada called Yalangu. It's a very well built gimbal head. It's all die-cast aluminum. It's exceptionally well damped. So a lot of things, when the cost comes down, you tend to lose features like fluid damping. They become very stiff. And this is surprisingly very fluid and easy to use. It's very smooth, and that's what I really want in a gimbal. Now, I've used competitive products from other brands. There's one out there, it looks practically identical, and it's $400. This one, I can tell you, is going to retail under $200. So less than half the price of one that's already in retailers, and this adds a few features. So a couple of the things I noticed, although everything is cast aluminum or CNC'd aluminum, the knobs on it are plastic. And plastic's okay because this is a fairly heavy plastic and the knob's large enough that you're able to use that with gloves. So there's two knobs on here. The bottom one is for rotation. The top one, and this is where your fluid effect comes in, is for your tilt, your angle. And then you've got a machined plate. Now, it does come with an Arca Swiss plate. Some lenses, like the Tamron 70 to 200 G2, have the plate built in. So it fits perfectly right in there, and I can lock that down, and that lens doesn't require another plate. I'm using the Tamron 150 to 600 version 1, and it doesn't have a plate. So I've added my own long plate. This one I've had for a while. The G2 version of this lens, like the G2 70 to 200, has the Arca Swiss foot built in, but this doesn't, and I've got my safety pins in here, so I can set this in, and I want to keep it fairly centered, and I'm going to lock it in. Now, most times when I shoot with a telephoto, I've got it zoomed all the way out. Most people, when they grab a gimbal, they just slap their gear on and shoot. And a lot of times that's okay, but I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks on how to get the most out of your gimbal and how to make it easier for you. So one thing I'll point out, if I aim my lens and camera up, it stays in position. If I point it down, it stays in position. And how do we achieve that? Well, this is adjustable for height on the side. Not all gimbals give you this option. And I've seen one that's almost $500 in stores, and it's not adjustable for height. So it's down here at the bottom. I point my camera up, and it dropped. Let's point it down. So the weight of the camera and the balance isn't set, so your camera's going to wind up dropping. This can be the difference between you getting the shot and missing the shot. Because if I have to go back to position, that can be the difference between a hawk flying away with its prey or coming in with its prey instead of having everything locked in. So how do we set this? Now, I like to set, if I've got a long lens, I set this towards the back a little bit because I want to have freedom with my hands in behind. And I want to make sure it's going to stay in place. So I'm actually pretty good there, but there is a bit of a drop. So two things. You can tighten the tension, but then it's really stiff to move. We don't want to do that. We want balance. So let's loosen that off. And I'm going to loosen this side. And I'm going to start by positioning the center of the pivot with the center of the lens. So if I let go here, there's still a bit of a creep. So I'm going to loosen this and raise it a little bit. And we're getting there. There's still a little bit of creep in there, so I'm probably just a hair high. Now, it's always a good idea to watch your fingers when you're tightening this because you don't want to pinch your fingers as you're tightening that. That's going to hurt because you want it fairly tight. So let's see. We're on. And it's just, yeah, that's not bad. I can point it up and it's going to stay in place. I can now loosen my tripod collar on my lens. So now I've got verticals, horizontals, and everything's nice and smooth. So this head is surprisingly smooth. I've got my rotation I can lock in and slow it down, and my angle up and down. And you never want to lock this tight. You want to be able to spin it freely. That's what you're looking for in a gimbal head, is that ability to keep smooth motion. So if I happen to be out shooting motorsports and I want to do a panning shot, I can loosen the rotation and it's going to give me a perfect pan. Now, a couple other tips when you're shooting with these long lenses. You know what? Everybody's told if you put your camera on a tripod, turn off your image stabilization. On a gimbal head, you don't want to do that. Unless, now there's a couple of times where you want to. If your shutter speed is too long, so if you're shooting, say, a second, 2 seconds or longer, or if you're shooting very fast, 1/1600th, 1/2000th or faster, if you're shooting too slow, the image stabilization can actually add shake to your image. And if you're shooting too fast, it's not going to do anything for your image either. You're shooting too fast for the VC or IS to help you, so there's no point in having it turned on. But when you're on a gimbal and you're shooting at most speeds, you'll want to keep your VC on. When it comes to shooting with gimbals, you're going to get 5,000 different ways of shooting. Two of the most common, number one is you've got both hands on the camera and you're just moving it around. You've got your eye here and you're aiming, and that's fine. How I like to shoot, which I find is more stable, I'll bring it a little closer, is I put one hand on top. The other, my thumb is on the AF on button. I always use back button autofocus. So if you haven't yet, try it. And I hate to say it, but RTFM, read the flippin' manual, but figure out where your AF on button is. So what this does is allows your camera, when you press that back button, not only does your camera autofocus, but your image stabilization kicks in. So when you press the shutter, all it's doing is taking an image. You're making things a lot faster for the little brains in your camera to keep up with you. So I always use, on my Nikons, usually 3D tracking, AF continuous, back button autofocus so I can track whatever I'm shooting, and then my shutter. And I'd like to keep one hand on top because I can tweak my zoom if I need to, or focus because my thumb is on the autofocus ring. So I'm able to fine-tune my image optically as I'm looking through the viewfinder and open my other eye to make sure that there's not something else going on. And that's how I like to shoot with a gimbal head. So I can keep moving it around. It helps keep things a little more stable because I've got my hand stabilizing the lens and I've got my hands on the key lens controls, zoom and focus, with my back button autofocus. And with most Nikon bodies, there's another AF on button on the grip as well, so I can shoot vertically and it's the same thing. Everything's right here and I'm able to get the shot. Another tip with gimbals is you don't have to use them on a tripod. When I shoot air shows, I like to put a gimbal head on a monopod because it's a lot more flexible. I can move it around a lot easier. I can go around it a lot easier because I find there's planes coming from every direction. So that makes life a lot easier as well. Now, one of the challenges with a gimbal head with zoom lenses is right now I've set the balance for 600 millimeters. When I bring the zoom in to 150, and let's loosen that, it's not going to stay balanced because all the weight with my camera, with my grip with the battery in here, it's now going to throw the balance off. So if I know that I'm shooting at distance, say 450 to 600 millimeters, usually I'm at 600, so I'll balance it at 6, but I may decide to balance it at 450, and then I can adjust my height to change the balance. Now, another little tip on this particular gimbal head, a lot of them are one piece. You can't adjust the height, so you're at the mercy of your gimbal, which seems silly to me. This one has a scale on it, so you can record what your settings were or what your positions were for each lens or for each focal length. So if you're shooting with a 70 to 200, it'll be at a different position than a long lens. So if I go to 400 and I've got this loosened off, and let's raise it up a little bit. It's still dropping. So it takes a little bit of playing around to get the spot where you want it. And you don't have to super tighten this until you've got your spot. Now, it doesn't help either that in this camera, my D300, I've got the Monster D3 battery in here, so it adds quite a bit of weight. You may find that you need to add a grip or weights to the bottom of your camera just to keep balance on this. So at 450, let's keep going. Let's see, okay. Yeah, so just a little tightening of the adjustment knob. And to give you an idea, I am now at 4 inches here instead of 6 inches because of the shorter focal length. So the shorter your focal length, the higher this needs to sit to keep that balance point for you. But I've got great movement here and it's going to stay fairly close. Oh, I might need to go a little higher. Yeah, so it takes a bit of playing around to get this set up. I'm going to rack that back out and lower this. Now the other nice thing with this, it does have a safety lock or a safety pin. So that's the setup that I need for this particular lens. So I hope you found these tips and tricks useful. This gimbal will be arriving in retailers soon, I believe, for under $200. You can't beat the value for the money. It's certainly better than the one that costs double. Even though they look the same, this does have the scale on it and the much larger knobs that are easier to grab. So that to me are 3 really key features that even gimbals costing 3 times as much don't have. So that certainly makes things a lot nicer and a lot more useful. So thanks for watching. If you like this, don't forget to click the little like button, show us a little bit of love. If you want to see more content like this, learn about new products as they're coming into the market, especially in Canada. We're a Canadian publication. All of our content's Canadian. Click the subscribe button. It's either up here. Click the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. You can also, and I know there's little cards popping up here and there, you can subscribe to Photo News Magazine. It's free of charge. It's all Canadian content. All of our writers are Canadian, and we feature everyone from across this beautiful country of ours. Subscribe for free. We'll mail that magazine to you or to your camera club. So if your club doesn't receive it, we can ship boxes of Photo News right to your camera club so every member gets to enjoy the magazine. But we'll get those out to you free of charge. Hit the subscribe button. We also have our Flash e-newsletter that's in there. So subscribe to that for some more content. We only send these out every 2 or 3 months, so we're not flooding your inbox with content. But it's all relevant Canadian content that I hope you'll see lots of value from. I know most of our readers have lots of good things to say about Photo News Magazine, and I'm proud to be a writer in there as well. So subscribe to the magazine, hit the like button. Any questions or comments, leave them down below, and we'll answer them either replying to your comment or in an email. And I look forward to seeing what you shoot. We've got nice weather finally coming to Canada. It's May 2nd. So hopefully with the bird migrations in effect, you can get your hands on a gimbal, get out there and get some shots that you couldn't before. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and happy shooting.